How are we going to take this Scion and turn it into a brand new tree with a new grafting technique that I've never tried before? Let's take a look at a banana grafting technique.
Here's a professionally made but unnecessary intro. So let's talk about figs. Let's talk about figs.
Figologist here, another episode of What Can I Watch a Bunch of Videos On and Then Claim Expertise? And today it's a new graft technique called banana grafting. It's not new, it's new to me. The rest of the world knows about this apparently. This came up in a discussion with a very knowledgeable grower on some forums that I've chatted with quite a bit, our Nexus. And he brought this up and I was like, banana graft, what's that? So I took the deep dive, and it's very prevalently used in pecan tree grafting, but I'm going to show you what the technique entails. So this is a 2-year-old Desert King. I do not need more Desert Kings. I have 4 in the ground, one main one, and then a couple small ones that are just plugged into random places just because the fruit is still so good and it grows so well here in the Pacific Northwest. So first thing we're going to do is understand that I don't need any of this superstructure. All right, so what I have here is a Colonel Lippmann's Black Cross, which is a later variety for the Pacific Northwest. Like if I just plug this in the ground, it's not going to fruit. So I got some cuttings from Brian Melton at Profigs, who is now my drug dealer and enabler by providing me with great cuttings. So I want to turn this into a tree. So what am I going to do? First thing is we're going to look at our target here. So when you're doing this grafting technique, your Scion thickness needs to be very similar to the rootstock. So here you can see pretty similar diameter there, and then pretty similar diameter there. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to bisect it, and I'm going to do a graft there and a graft there. So this is the part where new growers freak out. You spent all this time growing, and what I'm going to do is come right here. These are sterilized, and take that off. And then I'm going to come over here and choose my target. And I'm going to choose right here and take that off. So now we have yoink and yoink. So now we have Desert King, and we're going to turn this into Colonel Lippmann's Black Cross. So when is this grafting technique appropriate? Well, when you have active rootstock plus dormant Scion. That's the ideal for when to do this, all right? So let's get some setup. I'll walk you through this process. Hopefully it'll work, and I'll go through the supplies that we need as well. Okay, so here's my setup, and this is what we're going to need. You're going to need some rubber bands, grafting knife, and this is a double beveled knife that I use for all my air layers and any grafting like we're going to do here. This was made by my friend Tobiah, and it's been brutalized. You can see the pretty little fig design. Brutalized this year, and I can't wait to be done enough that I can ship this back to him down in the Springfield, Oregon area, and have him clean it up and sharpen it. I have a Japanese chisel. I use this as a bark lifter, parafilm tape, pruners, budding strips, foil. So let's set this up and kind of walk through it and see what happens. All right, so let's set this up. What's going to happen is I'm going to make just some marks, and we're going to do 4 flaps here. So that's the first mark. I'm going to do this in a way that hopefully I will not cut my finger off like I've done in previous videos. And so this just gives us an idea of like the alignment. So the next thing you want to do, and you can cut down if you wanted to, but the videos that seemed that made the most sense to me were to basically just, assuming your knife is sharp, you can cut through the bark there. And you're going to do this in all 4 planes. So again, I'm just putting, again, am I using my fingers here? Yes. This is very minimal. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And again, I'm trying to cut down about the same length all the way across, but I'm just rocking this back and forth to get through the bark. And I apologize if this one is in the way. My hand is in the way probably, but I can feel it going all the way through. Okay, so that part's done. Now the next part is taking a rubber band, and you want to have this wound enough that it's not, that it stays tight. Okay. And then the next thing we're going to do is take, if you have a bark lifter, you can use the bark lifter. But basically the idea is you're just going to peel down. You can kind of get a sense of why this is called a banana graft. And again, it requires you going all the way down, okay? Trying not to tear. And again, you don't want to touch the inside of the bark because that's the cambium layer, and that's where you get your graft contact. So you kind of come down all the way. And again, these instruments have been alcoholed. See, in this one I ripped a little bit, so that's unfortunate, but I'll try to rescue it here. All right, so here you can see why this is called a banana graft. Okay, so the next step will be preserving this. You don't want it to dry out, so this all comes back temporarily while we get the Scion ready. Okay, so for the Scion, I'll show you that step here, and then we'll come back to this setup and get an idea of what the next step is. All right, so here is our Scion. This is Colonel Lippmann's Black Cross, and when you look at this, you have a node, a node, a node, and a node. All right, now I don't need to have a 4-node graft. And when you look at this technique, what you're going to see is you need to leave space beneath the node because that's what's going to be how the graft is inserted. So I'm going to make a cut right about here. And I know that when I do, I'll use this one. I'll use this one, and then I'll use this one on the other branch. But I'm probably going to end up losing this particular node, and you'll see why here in a second. But this is how it's initially prepared. Now, the key to this technique, we'll do this one first, is making cuts, and again, cutting away from yourself. But you need to go all the way through the bark, all the way through the cambium, into the white wood. All right. So ideally, you're supposed to do this. Probably should have practiced this ahead of time in one fell swoop, which I did not do there. And if you can see, I'm through the wood, but there's still a hue of green here, and you don't want that for this technique. So, all right. So there's the first one. All right. And then you rotate it, and you do the exact same thing. And you want this strip of bark between, because your cambium layer, you can see here, it's that green right there. This isn't going to serve you any. This is like nonsense. The actual white wood gives the branch structure. All right. So you have cambium, 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 cambium. You rotate it again. All right, and then you rotate it one more time. All right, so what I've got here, if you look at this on end, is quasi-square shaped. All right, so I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say this side wasn't done enough because I want to get this there. So that's a little bit better, right? So you're taking this round sort of process and you're just trying to get some of that off. Okay, so here we have the Scion, okay? So let's go back to our um, rootstock and assemble this. Okay, so now comes the part where you kind of have to go a little more quickly. And again, you want to avoid touching the inside of the flaps if possible. And so what you're going to do is peel these back down as far as they'll go without trying to traumatize them too much. I know I'm breaking my own rule here, but you want to get these down out of the way. And then, without cutting any of those flaps, you're going to bring your pruners down. Ideally, again, not traumatizing. And you're going to go, pray for me. Womp. Okay. So that's the idea. And what should happen now is when you set this in and you want to kind of bring this back up, you want a little bit. See, I don't have enough coverage here. So my options are either to trim this a little bit more so it sets in, or try to go down further on the graft. So what I'm going to do quickly is make a little bit more of a flap down. Apologize for my hand getting in the way, but again, these are going to these flaps will desiccate fairly quickly. And then I'll go back to my chisel and peel these down a little bit more. Kind of as far down as they'll go without ripping. Okay, so now I've got a little bit more room to take down this central portion. Go back to my pruners, get this flap down out of the way, and pray for me. Okay, so now if I set this in, I've got better coverage. Just want to make sure that the Scion is appropriate. So I'll roll this back up. Yeah, and now you've got some better coverage here. And again, is there going to be some exposure? There is. But again, this is all being wrapped up. So that's what the banana graft is. And this is just temporary because we are trying to, we're going to try to bind this up. So the next step will be you can use budding tape or you can use parafilm. I'm going to start off with some parafilm because I want to just get this graft covered as quickly as possible. And then I'll come back and show you with the budding tape on for actual strength what this looks like. And again, the rubber band can stay there. It's not a big deal. But you just want to make sure that before you fully cover this thing, that the flaps are oriented in the way that you want, because you've got those two cambium contacts on either side of the flap that are going to really give you the nutrition to try to maintain this graft. So one more piece of parafilm. Okay, so you've got this covered. I'm going to go ahead and put the budding tape on, which will, my hand will be in the way over and over again. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like here in a second. So this is what it ends up looking like. We've got our budding tape around this over the parafilm, over the rubber band that was initially holding the flaps in place. So, from here down will be Desert King. From here up will hopefully be Colonel Littman. So, next step is I use Gashel grafting wax. This is a Swiss-made grafting putty that's super soft. It's interesting. The pecan grafting videos that I saw out of like LSU and Texas, they just use Elmer's glue, but that seems not elegant, and I am nothing but elegant. So I'm going to put some of that grafting wax on. And then the last step is, just because, and this part, is variable in terms of its necessity, is I've got parafilm to there, is just to basically take, and some people will do this ahead of time, um, is just to take the remainder of the Scion and cover it, just to prevent any further desiccation, just trying to keep this thing as viable as possible. And so, you want to kind of pull it a little bit taut so that buds can emerge. Um, and so, and then I've got a bud right here up top that I'm going to leave alone. So, um, this is the end result of this one. I'll go do this one and then show you what we end up with. And then the last part is foil. Remember, when you're doing this shiny side out, you're trying to get the reflective part of this. And unlike, when I'm covering an air layer and I want to peek every 9 days to make sure the thing is still intact, you're not going to be really peeking underneath this particular foil. You're going to want to leave this there for a while. You can kind of leave a little flap folded over if you want access to it, but that's a pretty steady graft there. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. And again, this is just to kind of prevent desiccation. I even saw some people then putting like a poly bag over this. I think that's probably overkill. Certainly, if any of you have done this method or you have other thoughts and tips and tricks, I'd please leave the comments down below. But this is kind of an intriguing idea. We'll see what happens to this bud and this bud over the course of the next, in the pecan world, it's 2 to 3 weeks. I think that's a little ambitious, but again, we're at the beginning of September, and this is still actively growing. So, is the sap flow going to be a disruption? I didn't see a lot of sap flow. I could do that thing where you kind of make some scoring cuts. Maybe I'll try that on one branch and just see if it actually matters at all. But let's get an idea of if this works, and I'll keep you all updated. And this is my first attempt at a banana flap technique or banana grafting technique. Thanks everyone for watching.